Hello again everybody, back again, and today we're back with another book review. I've really enjoyed doing the Bees review last week, and I just finished this book yesterday and I just want to talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. So that's what I'm going to do today. The book I'm going to be reviewing today is The Fire Sermon by Francesca Haig. So I've talked about this quite a lot on the channel already. I've talked about it quite a lot. It's a book that's going to be really, really big this year, and one of the first dystopian novels I was looking forward to reading for a while. So I'm looking forward to talking more about this, and actually I really enjoyed reading this, and I think there's a lot of stuff to talk about in here. I'm going to do my review in the same kind of way I normally do. So I'm going to talk about the concept, the plot, the characters and the writing, and then come up with an overall score at the end to let you guys know what I thought about it, kind of in a number form, which is easy to compare with other books, for example. So straight down with the concept then. The basic gist of this is that it's a post-apocalyptic dystopian novel. It's set about 400 years after the nuclear holocaust has killed a lot of people on Earth, and after the Holocaust they found that whenever a human had a kid, it was always twins, and there was one boy and one girl. One was perfect, was an alpha, there was no deformities or anything. The other, the omega, had some kind of physical or mental deformity linked to the Holocaust. So it would be things like they'd either have one arm, or one arm wouldn't grow, or in the case of the main character Cass, she's a seer, which means she gets glimpses of the past and the future, and that's one of the most useful deformities that an omega can have. But obviously the alpha omega thing is what explains the symbols on the cover. When it's discovered which of the kids is an alpha and an omega, it's usually quite obvious if it's a physical deformity. The omegas are kind of sent away to live in a separate society, and the alphas are then kind of the superior race. They treat themselves as very, very much superior, and increasingly it's about the division between the alphas and the omegas, and the oppression of the alphas on the omegas. What makes it really, really interesting, though, is that the twins, as well as being linked by this bond, if one dies, the other dies. If one's knocked unconscious, the other's knocked unconscious. If one's ill, the other's ill. So it adds a really interesting dynamic to it, because the alphas can't kill all the omegas, because they'll die themselves. So it's kind of a mutual dependency, but at the same time mutual hatred. It's quite interesting. It's a really clever concept, and that's what really drew me in. I'd normally get put off by dystopia, but it's such a unique take on it. I like post-apocalypse, so that was an added bonus. And just the concept of the twins is genius. How the author came up with it in the first place, I don't know, but it was a gold mine now she's hit it, and it serves her really well through the book. The plot. As you'd expect, a lot of it is influenced by everything I've just explained. So the main character, Cass, is sent away when it's discovered she's a seer and an omega. She's branded, and then from there she gets really, really caught up in the oppression on omegas. But because of her powers as a seer, she can have a more practical kind of response to it. So it's really, really interesting, and I do find that the first 50 pages are a little bit slower. It's a lot of world building, which obviously you have to do in this kind of novel to start with. You have to really get the world to grips, and there's quite a lot of complicated issues, and it's quite a complicated society. But it did just drag a little bit. I wasn't excited to pick it up for the first 50 pages when I was reading. After that, it goes crazy. It's like non-stop, fast-paced brilliance. It's really, really good. There's constantly something happening. It's constantly adding new dynamics and new elements to the plot, and there's never a lull point from then onwards. So it's really, really whirlwind. I absolutely loved it. It's not a short book. It's about 420 pages, but it doesn't feel it. And once I got into it, that was it. It was very difficult to stop me reading it. In terms of how the plot actually develops, it's really clever. It does progress down a lot of the avenues I'd expect it to, but maybe a little bit quicker than you would think it does. A lot happens. A lot happens. And it's got one of the most satisfying final confrontations. It really builds up, as I'll talk about a little bit later, kind of the antagonist of the book. And the final confrontation in this, even though it is a trilogy, the antagonist from that is kind of centralised on this book. So the final confrontation is incredible. It's really, really good. Really breathtaking, gripping, a lot of shocks and twists. And that's another one of the things the book does really well. It keeps unveiling secrets little by little all the way through. You get constant dribs and drabs of information. And again, I'll talk about one of the characters in a little bit, but essentially you know nothing about him, and when you get the revelation of who he is, it's really, really incredibly done. And I think the plot of this really lives up to the concept, takes the concept really by the horns and runs with it, and it works well for it, and it really stands it out from a lot of other stuff that's quite similar in nature. So that brings me on to characters. This is possibly the only place the book slips up a little bit. The main character I really like. I think she's quite independent and she's quite defined, especially towards the end. You get a real sense of where her moral compass is, what her particular, desires and her priorities are, and you get to see as she forms relationships with other people around her that she's a really, really interesting character, and I really like her. I'm excited to read more about her in the next couple of books, especially with some of the stuff that happens towards the end of this one. The other main character is Kip, and he's really, really interesting because when Cass finds him, without giving away too many spoilers, he doesn't know who he is, where he's from, what his background is, and throughout the whole novel that's a really underlying current of who is he? Will he like it when he finds out who he is? When will he find out who he is? It's really, really interesting in how he feels about not knowing his past. It's really nice that as their relationship develops, it's about who he is now rather than who he was. But in the final conversation, it all comes whirling back together. It's a really, really satisfying payoff when you find out. His character, because he doesn't know much about his past, is a bit bland. He actually is very, very funny. He's got a really good sense of humour, even in some quite morbid situations when it feels a bit out of place. He's got a very good, witty sense of humour, a lot of sarcasm. And I did laugh a few times at it. That's always a good sign. But beyond that, he's a bit limp. There's not much about him that's interesting. The main thing about him that interested me, that made me want to read more, was who was he? Who's he going to find out he was in the past? It's not about his character as it is now, and that was a bit of a letdown in the book because he's a really big part of the book, and he just wasn't that interesting. There's a whole cast of supporting characters as well. So the most significant are a pair of twins called Piper and Zoe, and they're dynamic, especially because obviously in the society as it is, there aren't many twins that live together, but you get to see glimpses of them as a pair of twins, and it's really, really clever. It's a really poignant moment when you first see them as twins because it's so unexpected, and the main character has never seen twins, an Alpha and Omega, working together like this, and it's really, really interesting. They're both quite witty, quite sarcastic, quite dry characters, and I really liked them. Then the others are the antagonists. So one of them is Cass's twin, Zach, who actually in the first 100 pages is a really big part of the book, but actually you hear a lot of hearsay about him, but he's not a main character from then on. So he's a bit of a letdown, but you can tell they've built him up for the next couple of books rather than this one. The other one is the Confessor, who is genuinely one of the creepiest antagonists in a book I've heard of for a while. So it's really, really interesting that she is also a seer, and she's really, really powerful, and she's an Omega working with the Alphas. So there's all kinds of complex dynamics behind her character, and she has a particular interest in Cass all the way through, and it's fascinating to see Cass's fear of the Confessor. So the final confrontation in the end is incredible and really enjoyable, and it's her as an antagonist that really drives a lot of the plot on the way through and really makes it quite enjoyable. The last thing to consider is the writing, and I actually really, really like the style in this. The author's been a poet and things before, and you can kind of see that come across in this. There's quite a lot of quite poetic language. It's not intrusive on the story. For the most part, it is wonderfully descriptive, but doesn't, slow down the pace or intrude on what's going on with the characters in the story. And I really appreciate that, but there are some lovely, especially at the end of chapters, some lovely little poignant metaphors and little similes and things that really wrap up a chapter really nicely and leave a really nice conclusion to each individual chapter. And that's a lovely thing. I notice pretty much every chapter there's a really poignant ending, and it's really, really well done. There's also some lovely turns of phrase. So she talks about the sunrise threatening the night sky, and I love that. And she uses a really nice variety of language and uses a lot of words in ways you wouldn't expect. And I wasn't expecting with a dystopian novel to focus on the writing much, but the way it's done is really clever and makes it feel it's a little bit more literary than a lot of other dystopia, and I love that. And I think the writing style, whatever this author goes on to do, I think she can do a really good job because she's got such a good grasp of the language going into it. So overall then, I really, really liked this. I think there's a lot that goes into it. The concept it's really high concept. A lot of it's focused on that, and I love it because it's a really intriguing start. And the plot's really good. It leaves a lot of stuff open for the next couple of books. There's already going to be another one out next January, I think. And it's really, really a really good start to a series. Some of the characters are a little bit limp, and some of them could probably be explored more, but obviously there are 2 other books to go into it. The writing style is also really, really good. I am concerned how they're going to make a film of it, because this is like 400 pages of lots of stuff, and everything in there feels important, so I don't know how they're going to cut it down to like a 2-hour film or whatever. So I'm intrigued to see how that goes. It has already been optioned for a film, and I'm sure the sequels will be films too, so I'm intrigued to see how that goes. I'm looking forward to the film. I think they could do a really good job of it, and I think this is going to be massive. It comes out towards the end of this month, in February, and I think it's going to be huge. It's what I'm going to be pushing loads at work, I know for sure, because I've absolutely loved it, and I think it's a really good book for the current market. And I'm expecting there'll be a lot of people on BookTube that read this once it's come out. So, yes, I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10. It's really, really good. I think it's a really good starting point for the rest of the series, and I'm really excited to see where the author, Francesca Haig, takes it. So my review's finished. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this book, and I've really enjoyed talking about it some more. I know a lot of you will probably end up reading this because it is a very teen YA style of book, and I think it's something BookTube will really get behind. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys think. But if you've enjoyed my review, if you could please leave a like or subscribe down below, that'd be incredible. And any comments about the review style or what you think about the book, whether you're excited to read it, whether there's anything you're not sure about going forward, and whether I put you off, that could possibly quite happen. But if you just leave a comment down below, that'd be great. I'm also going to put my Twitter and Goodreads links in the description as always. And if you're enjoying these reviews, definitely let me know, because I'm enjoying talking about books in a bit more depth than you can in a monthly wrap-up. And if you guys are enjoying it, I'll carry on doing loads more. If you're not going to watch it, then obviously I might not. But just let me know what you think down below. And otherwise, I will see you in the not-too-distant future with my next video.